Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
So it's like we all know taxes are going to be higher, and yet very few people are actually planning for that, because the idea is if you're going to have to pay taxes, you want to do it at the lowest rate possible.
Hey there, and welcome to the Magnify Your Message podcast. I am your host, Cheryl Hunter, and today we're diving into something that we all need to think about: our financial futures. Now, look, if you're thinking that taxes and retirement, that doesn't really sound that exciting, trust me, this episode is going to be a game changer, because today I am joined by David Hyden, the author and founder of Retirement Tax Advisors. David is a true expert who is helping people not just take control of their money and their futures, but he's helping to demystify what for so many of us is confusing and even frightening. The thought of retirement and running out of money, I know, is a concern for a lot of people. Look, many years ago, I used to volunteer at old age homes, and people used to say that in there a lot. I knew I was going to run out of money. Well, God, luckily, today we've got David here to not only share strategies and financial planning secrets, but to just pull back the curtain on so many things. He's busting myths, he's uncovering opportunities that you probably didn't know even existed, and he's revealing the story of how he came to do this and why it matters to him anyway. Look, even if you're somebody who naturally shies away from numbers, don't worry about it. David's got a really down-to-earth way of making even the most complex financial topics practical and easy to understand. And he shares a really cool story about how he helped a couple turn a financial crisis into peace of mind, and why taking action now is so critical given all the big tax changes coming down the pike. So, whether you're planning for retirement yourself or you just want to make smarter decisions with your money, this episode has got something for you. Let's dive in. I'm really looking forward to introducing you to today's guest, David Hyden. David, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Cheryl. Absolutely.
Who are you? What do you provide? Who do you serve?
Um, I have a company called Retirement Tax Advisors, and we specialize in minimizing or eliminating taxes in retirement. We also have a lot of different strategies to help folks that are facing higher taxes in the present time. There's just an awful lot of things that get missed by CPAs and accountants and financial advisors. So we kind of are in that niche between CPAs and accountants and financial advisors.
Interesting. How did you choose this? Why did it matter to you?
That's a really good question. So I've been in the industry a long time, and I just started to notice that the idea of higher taxes and paying a lot of taxes, that's of concern to a lot of folks. And there are certain financial products that tend to have more tax advantages than others. And I started reading quite a bit about some of these different strategies, and I just decided to kind of go in that direction because before this life, I was in marketing and, a unique selling proposition. And I realized this was an area that really was being overlooked in financial services. And I thought, this is my direction. So I've just kind of run with it and been doing it for quite a few years now.
So, David, I'm fascinated to hear the story behind how you became who you are today. Take us back, will you? What are some of the critical junction points that led to you becoming who you are today?
Okay. Well, oh boy. Well, nothing noble about it. a friend of mine back in the mid 80s, I'm dating myself now, but he said, "Hey, you got to go work with me at this company. You can make a lot of money and help people." And I wasn't really doing anything in particular. I think I was waiting tables and bartending. And so I went in for an interview, and they decided to give me a chance. And that was for the Equitable back in 1986, back in Arizona. I did really well. I just kind of threw myself into it and became Rookie of the Year for the state of Arizona. Won a lot of trips, and I really liked it because there's a lot of recognition if you perform well. And I did make a pretty good income. So I did that for a couple of years. That was my first taste of the financial services industry. And then I had a successful marketing and advertising company called Affluent Dallas back in the mid 90s. And, I had a lot of high profile clients in the Dallas area. I had the Dallas Ballet, the Gaylord Texan, I had the Texas Rangers. I had a lot of really good clients. And then when the market crashed in 2008, the first thing that companies do is they cut their marketing budgets. And so I lost like half of my clients, in a very short period of time. And I tried to keep it going as long as I could. And I just finally, I didn't have any choice. I had to do something else. And so you know, I got back into the financial services industry because it's recession proof, and I had experience. And that was back in 2010, and just have kind of just worked my way back and specialized a lot of education, training, licensing, all kinds of just stuff. And anyway, that's kind of the short version of how I got where I'm at.
Had you done anything in financial services since the 80s until the recent, more recent entree back into it?
No, so probably so I was in the financial services for a couple, 2, 3 years back in the 80s. I got out of it because I was going through a lot of personal issues that we don't want to discuss here. Ended up moving, just kind of starting over. And last thing I wanted to do was get into anything that was career oriented. I just wanted to kind of do something low stress. And anyway, so
There's sometimes taking a step away from something and then returning later. I find personally that it's as though almost as though I had applied that time developing my skill in that area. I took a long break from writing for several years and I returned back, and it's as though all the other skills I developed in life made me so much better and more facile and fluid with that. Did you find that was the case as you returned? I see you nodding. How was it for you returning to financial services?
uh, well, I guess why I was nodding is because I went to college right out of high school, and I went 3 semesters, and I didn't have any direction, so I got out. And but I always kind of regretted doing that, so I went back to school in my early 30s, and I really loved being back in school. I started taking classes that I wanted to take, and I was just an avid learner. And so sometimes stepping back, as you said, and then getting back into something, you come back with more life experience. And that's certainly been true with financial services as well, because you have all those life experiences, and people you meet, and just it's sort of endless. It sort of builds on itself, and it really prepares you to be a better version of the self you were before.
You had mentioned when you first started in college being, kind of lost and aimless,
Mhm.
paraphrasing here, but what was it that occurred that took you from being there, lost, aimless, directionless, to returning sometime later and being eager to learn, 180 degrees apart. What had happened in your life that brought you to that point?
Well, you may not know this about me, but I'm also a musician and a bass player. And I actually left college to go play in a band. And so we had the dream of, and I was fortunate to be with this band because I was kind of a beginner. And so I really was sort of starry eyed and I was excited and I gave up everything to go work with these guys. And so I loved music. And I think when I went back to college, I went through a messy divorce. That's what happened back in the mid 80s. And um, when that finally was over, I just decided I'm going to start doing everything I ever wanted to do. I started snow skiing and running, hiking. I went back to school, learned how to play tennis. I got in a band. I was very involved in my church, and my life was just filled. What you might say the abundant life, but I was just passionate about everything. And anyway, so that was a big part of it. My love for music.
It's amazing that out of the two possible ways you could have gone following the messy divorce, you chose to let it expand you, use it as an opportunity for growth. What I'm wondering really is, David, to what degree did that messy divorce, and I would imagine the financial ramifications of it, propel you to wanting to help others with their finances today in financial services?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I remember early in my career, I just assumed that people who had good jobs, good incomes, engineers and, you know, that demographic that they didn't really need any help. They were making plenty of money and they'd be fine. But I remember the first time I really got an awakening. I had an appointment with this couple in a very affluent town right next to where I live. And I got there and I knocked on the door and she opened the door, the wife did. And right behind the door, I could see oxygen tanks. And that was, I knew something was wrong. But she took me into their living room. And right inside the living room, there was a hospital bed set up where her husband was.
Wow.
That was startling to see that. And these folks were in their mid 50s. They really weren't that old. And so I always like to start an appointment with, why did you want to see me? And so the husband, he did all the talking, but basically, they didn't have any kids. They didn't have any other family. It was just the two of them. He had a very good paying job, but he had been diagnosed with cancer. Um, and so he went through all you use up your sick leave, you use up your administrative leave, you use your vacation time, you use all that up. And then you start dipping in, he ends up spending all of his retirement savings because, he's sick and can't work. Right. And finally, I mean, they're out of money. And his wife had never worked. She'd always been a stay-at-home wife. And so he said, the reason why I want to see you is I don't have any assets left and I'm going to be dying soon. And is there any way I can get some life insurance to leave for my wife? So because we've got nothing. And, you know, um, I'd never felt so helpless in my whole life. And honestly, we sat there and cried together and prayed. That's the only thing I knew to do, was to pray for him, because there's no way in the world a life insurance company is going to give life insurance to somebody who's got 6 months to live. You know, but that was really eye opening, because here was someone who was, by society standards, very successful. And his financial side was a mess, and so it really opened my eyes, and I started to take serious the work that I was doing to help people. It wasn't just a way for me to earn a living; became a sort of a mission. Anyway,
Boy, the analogy of this affluent neighborhood, the beautiful home to which you pull up, and it's so polished and beautiful, polished to perfection on the outside, and then that is veiling what's really going on the inside. That must have been a real moment of awakening. Was anything able to be done for this particular family?
nope, nothing.
Mm.
There's nothing I could do for them. He was out of assets. He was uninsurable. No, there was nothing.
Wow.
And I guess since then, I mean, there's a very high percentage of people, and I've met with hundreds and hundreds of people over my career, but the vast majority, they like to put things off. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I just think to myself, I try and paint a picture, and but if someone's not ready, they're not ready, and I don't know. I just do what I can. So,
Oh, that I pray that the story you just shared about the sick man and his wife serves as the ghost of Christmas future for people listening, because it is the human predicament. We postpone. We think we've got forever. I was driving home today from exercising, and as I was in the car, these group of kids on e-bikes cut in front of me. It's summer right now, and they cut in front. They've all got helmets on that are not fastened.
mhm.
And I think, the folly of youth. They are cutting in front of me. They've got to be going 35 miles an hour or something like this. They're just being so reckless. Well, as teenagers, you think you've got forever.
Oh
But
yeah.
in some regard, nothing changes. We all live under that same cockamamie illusion that we've got forever. It's a heartbreaking story that you share about that husband and wife, and yet I am committed to applying that, and I hope each of you listening will do that as well and really assess, what is it that I'm putting off that I really truly can't afford to any longer? David, that is a blessing and a gift. Thank you.
Sure.
So, look, I mean, stories are how we learn, right? Since time
Mhm.
immemorial. The pictographs on cave walls. What other I'd love to hear any other stories you can share with us that illustrate the work that you do, the value of it. One of them, I just want to say, in wanting to I know your commitment is to open people's eyes on a broader scale, and there is a fun story that I would request that you share about being featured on television and
Oh,
last minute. That's one of the
yeah.
way, people don't recognize or realize perhaps that major media acts oftentimes in a very impromptu way. We not only need someone, but we need them immediately. Would you share that story?
Oh,
And then
yeah.
any other stories you'd like to share?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my wife and I were doing a staycation, and we were staying at a very nice hotel in downtown Dallas. And wouldn't you know it, I get contacted by one of these media people, and this was my first TV interview, and say, "Look, we want to have you on, and can you be ready?" And I was thinking, well, I don't want to tell her no because this is my chance, right? And so
Right.
I had to set up in the hotel room, and she gave me the idea of what we might be talking about, because I'm going to be interviewed. And then there was financial catastrophe that occurred about the banks. Some very large banks were closing. This was March of last year. Probably most folks remember that. And so the guy that's interviewing me, Chris, on the Chris Salcedo show, he wants to talk about that. Well, and they let me know like an hour or two before that. And so I don't know anything about it. So I've got to get on the internet and read up on what's going on, just because so I can talk about it intelligently, because that's not what I do. I mean, I'm a tax strategist, and he wants to talk about bank failures. And so I'm reading about it, and luckily they brought some other guy on. I don't even remember who he was, and so they were kind of asking both of us questions back and forth, and really wasn't a good interview. I mean, I didn't feel, I wasn't comfortable the whole time because it was rushed, and I was unprepared, and the topic wasn't on line for what I do. And anyway, but it was a good learning experience, Cheryl.
It's interesting that you characterize it that way, David, because from my perspective, now I've got my own anecdotal experience of my very first TV
I'll bet
appearance, and
you
I was
do.
just they had put one of those devices in the ear.
Oh,
They call that the IFB, but there's a delay. And I
oh,
knew there was a delay from once in a while you'll watch on television news where, say hypothetically some reporter is out in the field covering a storm or something, and they'll go, and Fred, out to you. Fred, can you hear me, Fred? And he comes in a few seconds later, like, oh, yes, Marge and Bill, I'm
you
here.
see
And
that all the time. Yeah.
but I had known there was some delay, and I was like, do I hear it before or after? I don't know how this works. And I'm looking at the screen, it's completely out of sync with what's in my ear, and I'm just like, I'm gonna let my eyes go blurry and not even stare hard at the screen in front of me and just go. And I thought that was the worst thing I've ever done. But uh, it, we're oftentimes our harshest critics, as you know.
Sure.
But it's interesting. You say that, and yet you were already media trained, you know how to speak in sound bites. Sure, the bank failure isn't your wheelhouse, and yet you're expert in finance. You're expert in all things in that area. I thought, personally, I thought you kicked butt on it. I mean, I'm like, wait, my first interview was terrible. But then again, we are our harshest critics. So kudos to you, and to say, hey, yeah, on vacation, I'm going to provide this, and to immediately roll with the punches, look up precisely what happened so that you could, in an intelligible way, give an interview that provided value for an audience. I thought that was fabulous. Oh, David.
That's funny. Very funny.
So look, speaking of being media trained, you know exactly how to provide value for an audience. So I want to turn it over to you. What do you want to provide for people listening or watching us today?
Well, um, there's a reason why I've chosen to work in retirement planning, but specialize on minimizing taxes. There isn't a day that goes by where, I mean, if you're paying attention, there's always at least a couple of articles about the national debt, Medicare and Social Security insolvency, rising taxes. I mean, that stuff's in the media all the time if you're paying attention. And I became convinced years ago that there's no way taxes are going to be lower or the same in the future. I mean, I ask everybody in the future, do you believe taxes will be higher, lower, or the same? And I've never met one person that believes they're going to be anything but higher. So it's like we all know taxes are going to be higher, and yet very few people are actually planning for that, because the idea is if you're going to have to pay taxes, you want to do it at the lowest rate possible. Right. And so we have trillions of dollars in IRAs and 401ks that money hasn't been taxed yet. And see, that's Uncle Sam's. He's going to get a large portion of that. I was talking to a guy the other day. He's got about close to $1 million in his 401k. And We were talking about doing Roth conversions and stuff. And, I said, do you even know how much of that money is yours?
Wow, I bet that was eye-opening.
Yeah. I mean, and no one knows because
Right.
you don't know at what rate it's going to be taxed. I said, wouldn't it be better to pay the taxes today at a known rate
Hmm.
than at an unknown rate later, which is likely going to be higher? And that's the other thing. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but that was enacted in 2017. It took effect in 2018. And what that did is that lowered marginal tax rates for just about everybody. It increased the standard deduction, it doubled, took away some exemptions. It did a whole lot of things to the tax code. Let's see, all of those changes, all those tax changes are going to expire at the end of next year, and they will automatically revert to what they were before they went into effect. So we will see a tax law change by the end of last year, regardless of whether Congress acts or not. If they don't act, the law will just go back to what it was. Our standard deduction will be cut in half. Certain personal exemptions will come back. Marginal rates will go up. And I believe a lot of people are going to get caught because tax planning takes time. You can't just do this in the space of 30 days. I mean, it takes years to do it properly, depending on the size of your portfolio.
So remember how one of the things that we go over when we're talking about media training is how USA Today, being the largest paper in the country, is written between a sixth and eighth grade reading level. So just for the sake of all those out there, myself included, simplify this and say, okay, so what should we do if it takes so long? And by the end of 2025, you're saying it's all going to revert. So
Yes.
what do we do?
Well, what I've been specializing in is Roth conversions. And what Roth conversions are is you take your pre-tax money. Let's say you have $1 million of untaxed 401k or IRA money. And let's say that you're going to retire in 5 or 10 years. Well, what we would do is we would start converting that money to after tax. So let's say we converted $200,000 per year for 5 years. So if you're making $200,000 a year and we convert $200,000 a year, you have to pay taxes on $400,000 income. So we have to plan this out. We want to convert it as fast as possible, but we want to do it in a way to where it's tax efficient and we're not paying the taxes at a higher rate. We want to keep the effective tax rate as low as possible. And so we're doing Roth conversions for folks, and we're turning all this pre-tax money to after tax so that all the growth and all the income later is tax-free.
And so that now, while you're working, even though the tax burden will be higher, now while you're working, you can carry that load rather than later when you aren't. And like
Yes.
you said, the tax rate will be inevitably higher.
Well, I mean, no one knows for sure, but I mean, an educated guess, I mean, I could cite lots of professionals that they believe taxes are going to go up. But you know what? The reason why people don't like doing Roth conversions is because they have to pay the taxes in the current year. I mean, if you convert $100,000, well, that's like you had another $100,000 in income and you had to pay the taxes on that, whatever your effective tax rate is. So people don't like doing that, and I don't blame them. But we have a new strategy to where we work with a couple of different very large financial companies, and they're willing to get involved and help to where if you'll roll over that money to their accounts, they will give you a sizable bonus. So we use that bonus and the growth on the accounts to pay the taxes on the Roth conversions. And that way we take the bite out of it.
Makes that makes really good sense.
Well, it's a way to do Roth conversions, convert your pre-tax money to after tax and not have to come out of pocket on the taxes. After however many years it takes to convert all that money, after 10 years, say, I mean, it's all tax free. All the growth is tax free, all the income's tax free, and you didn't have to pay the tax bill. See, and that's the thing. There's no way to get out of paying taxes. There's no way to get out of it. So it really comes down to, does a person want to pay the taxes themselves now or later? Or if they leave it to their kids will pay it. Right. So there's no way to get out of paying taxes. So they can either pay it themselves or their families will pay it, or they can try a strategy to where, they get some help paying the taxes.
This is mind-blowing, David. I thank you. What a gift to provide for all of us listening. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, there's one other area that we're starting to do a lot of work with. So for folks that they're going to be selling something that's highly appreciated. It could be real estate, could be their home, could be some crypto, could be some stocks, whatever it is, something that's highly appreciated, and you're going to sell it. Well, if you receive a very large check, you're going to pay the capital gains taxes at the highest rate. And this is another strategy that most financial advisors are completely unaware of. Most tax professionals, CPAs and accountants, they don't know this exists, that you can do this. But we have some partners. We do something called a deferred sales trust. And I'll use a story to illustrate. I met with a couple last Friday. They bought their home for $2 million. They're selling it for $5.6 million. So they stand to walk away with a minimum of $3 million. Well, that's a very large capital gain. So the way we're able to help them is we put the sale of the house into this trust. And so you avoid what the IRS calls constructive receipt. They never directly receive the money, so they don't get taxed on it. So the money sits in a trust, and we set up an agreement to pay out a smaller amount, whatever they want, over a period of time, because no one's going to spend $3 million at once. They want to use it for lifetime income. They want to use it for travel. They may want to invest in something. But you don't want $3 million coming at one time. You're just going to be taxed at the highest rate. So we're able to pay out this money over time. And so they pay at a lot lower tax rate. We can also grow that portfolio, and using the money that they would have paid in taxes, we can use that to make the portfolio even larger. And we can move this we can make it generational. So it passes down to, their kids and their grandkids, however they want to set it up. But it's just a way to really help people with very large capital gains problems avoid all those taxes.
I plan on listening and re-listening to this episode. But better yet, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's retirementtaxadvisors.com. And there's links to get in touch with me, or, I mean, I can just give you my office number, my email address if you want that.
I'll put all of that in the liner notes of the episode, so everybody that wants to go directly to you can do so. This has been eye-opening and frankly entertaining as well. Thank you for sharing.
Well, that's good.
Time.
Yeah, a lot of people say, you're such a serious person. But I appreciate, your demeanor. You're able to keep things light. And, when you talk about people's money, sometimes it gets a little too serious. So it's good to laugh about it. And, money's not everything, but you do need it. So anyway, appreciate that.
Exactly. David, it's been a delight. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Cheryl.
Join us next week as I bring you yet another person who is using their message and their life's work to make a difference in the quality of the lives of the people that they serve. I will see you then. Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.